All right, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Backmarkers F1 Show, FP1 stream for the 2025 Miami Grand Prix. Glad you guys could join us here on this Friday afternoon, and I'm pleased to be joined by an old friend of the Backmarkers F1 Show podcast. We had him on around this time last year, and he returns for this live stream here today. Welcoming the CEO of SimStaff, Josh Martin. Josh, thanks for joining me here today. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing good, Chris. Great to be back. Yeah, it's funny we were saying it was just over a year ago, but I think Miami's a pretty good reason to catch up. So looking forward to today.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've got an exciting session ahead of us here. This is the first and actually the only free practice session of today. Of course, this is the second sprint weekend of 2025, and cars are already going out on track. If you're new to these streams, it's pretty simple how it works. On the left hand side of your screen, you've got the live timing that is basically up to date of all the fastest times, different tires drivers are using. And then also on the middle of your screen there, we've got the driver tracker, just so you can see how many cars and which cars are out on track. So it's going to be a pretty busy start to this session, of course, with a lot of drivers, of course, getting as much time as they can before sprint qualifying later today. But before we get into kind of some of the more action on track, Josh, I'm actually interested to get your thoughts. We're 5 races into the season so far. 4 of them have been won by McLaren. I'm just curious to get your thoughts so far in the 2025 season. What stood out to you? What's been maybe some surprises that you haven't anticipated? What are your opinions on this season so far?
Yeah, it's an interesting season. I find it's always the same as you come towards the end of kind of a regulation cycle. Obviously, next year bringing new regs in for the teams and the drivers. But I think not unexpectedly, but as we would expect. Sorry, McLaren have dominated pretty much in every vertical. I think the real battle is going to be actually between their two drivers on track this season. Red Bull. Max is obviously doing what he can with the car. I've been impressed with Yuki. I think he's really stepped up for a car that is obviously quite pointy and quite unpredictable, I would say. And then I think, the battle of the rest of the field has been massive as well, right? We've seen massive changes with Williams, with Alpine, Haas even having some good runs. So, yeah, I don't know about you, Chris, but I think for me, the real interest is kind of that middle of the field. I think the front end, we kind of know what's going to happen, but certainly that middle of the pack, the best of the rest is where the potential really is going to be for some good races, I think.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's kind of the expected at the front, right? With the big, I guess we can say big four now with McLaren, Red Bull, Ferrari, and Mercedes. But yeah, that midfield, and it's so close, right? Even from P1 all the way down to P20, as you mentioned earlier, with the final year of a regulation set, we always see the pace and the field kind of bunched up really close together. So that's exciting to see when you kind of see from even if, for example, we go into Q1, P1 to P15, the gap is only hundredths of a second each time. So it's nice to see that everything is so close, which is unfortunate because we get reset again next season for all the new rules, and then we're likely to probably get a bigger gap as we did with the last big regulation set. So, but anyways, that's 2026 talk. So we'll get to that maybe for another time. So really busy out on track so far. I think George Russell, the Mercedes, so far the only car still in the pit lane. But like we said, it's going to be such a busy start here. The softest tire is actually available once again for this weekend. We got the C3, C4, and the C5. And this is actually a topic that I wanted to talk about because I did a quick video just on the potential strategies for this weekend, Josh. And a lot of the problems we've had this year so far have been one stop races or just not a whole lot of variety in terms of strategy. So, what do you think some of the solutions can be? Because I've seen earlier today, I was reading that there's an idea to increase the speed lane pit limit in order to potentially make more pit stops, more encouraging more pit stops in races. What do you think about that? And what are some of the solutions maybe that the F1 could try and implement to sort of avoid these boring one-stop races?
Yeah, it's definitely tricky, isn't it? I mean, although in saying that, I don't know about you, but I think back, the last couple of races, whether there's been a safety car or a turn of events, the pit stops do kind of have an impact and play into it as I see Piastri topping the timing
Yeah,
sheets.
there's
But
just
I think,
left like so
again,
many
it's one
tools
of
in the
those
cockpit,
byproducts. I think as you come
and
towards the end of a
everything's just
regulation
falling
cycle,
apart.
the teams have
What
worked
the
out how
fuck
to
does
get the
this have?
most out of the tires with minimal time spent in the pits, right? So I don't know if, increasing the pit lane speed is going to help. I mean, it's really tricky. I think everyone's always been quite critical, right, of the Pirelli tires and how they've worked. But there was a season maybe you can remind me, Chris, but there was a season where the tires were exploding constantly. I mean, it's kind of two ends of the scale, right? I don't know if there is an immediate solution, but if the drivers are able to push more, they're obviously going to take more out of the tires, and it might fix itself with the new regs.
Yeah, that was, I believe it was 2020, I think, when Lewis Hamilton finished that race with three wheels and managed to win it. Sainz
Yeah.
also had a puncture earlier there. But it's kind of how it goes. Even when Pirelli first entered F1, they had tire failures, then they made the tires more robust. And then we get to this point now where, you could do almost 50 laps on a set of hard tires. And so I
Mm.
don't know. It's actually just interesting. I don't know if you guys are seeing this on your home feed, watching at home, but Lando Norris of McLaren complaining that there were tools that were stuck in the car. And I think he just pulled a wrench and some other tool out of the cockpit, and they weren't small either. They were pretty huge. So yeah, that's definitely not the start of the weekend that Norris would have hoped for.
No, definitely. I think that DeWalt sponsorship, obviously, yeah, getting the maximum impact out of it there. But I mean, it happens all the time, right? I'm sure. Was it Seb was complaining if someone's phone was in the cockpit before? It's amazing, right? Just how they forget what's left in the cockpits of these cars. And I always thought they were like really tightly compact for the drivers, but clearly there's still a bit of space for stuff to get stuck in there as well. So,
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Especially in that pedal box area when it's, those little
mm.
little bolts and screws and things like that. And yeah, like you said, it's easy to drop something in there. So, but yeah, Lando Norris got that one sorted out so far. It's Max Verstappen so far with the fastest time, a 29.8, set on the medium tire. That is the C4. 3 laps on the board so far. Also, a shout out to Max Verstappen. Congratulations. He is a new father. The birth of his baby girl was yesterday, I believe. So he was absent for media day. Lucky for him, and and he flew in, I think, just today actually to Miami. So yeah, it was interesting. It was funny. I saw some stat earlier just on Twitter where it was like Max Verstappen is the first new father on the grid since, or the first new world champion father on the grid since Sebastian Vettel in 2014. So I gotta
Oh, wow.
chuckle out
They
of that.
always put out the most random stats, don't they? It's always amazing. I feel this season has been like the season of obscure statistics, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know, man. It's like sometimes I don't know if they're just trying to fill content or what it is, but yeah,
Mm.
it's like it's kind of like in the NBA too, stats where it's like oh, like the first player to score X amount of points and assists on this day when the sun is shining at this time and it's this windy and different things. They just come up with all these crazy stats, but it's just like okay, but
100%, 100%.
yeah, so Verstappen, actually, Russell just gone quickest, a 29.7, and just a hundredths of a second faster than Max Verstappen. Everybody so far on the medium tire, except for Isaac Hadjar and Liam Lawson. So the two racing bulls are out on the hardest compound tire, and the rest of the field so far on the medium. The two Aston Martins are showing on the soft, but I think that they just did one of those. Aston Martin are one of the teams that do this, where they kind of do a heat cycle on a set of tires just to kind of break them in for the rest of the weekend. So we just talked about Isaac Hadjar at the moment. Let's talk a little bit about the rookies because he's an impressive rookie so far in 2025. Which of the rookies so far this season has impressed you the most?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think Isaac has flown under the radar a little bit for how well he's done. I mean, I think Antonelli obviously is the one that kind of stands out above the rest for everybody. I think he's really got to grips with the Mercedes a lot quicker than certainly if you look at the other rookies, perhaps how they've kind of closed the gap to their teammates. But it's been interesting, and I don't know if you feel the same, Chris, but I feel the kind of progression of these drivers, you often see them kind of go through situations that perhaps don't play to their merit. So I think back to Bahrain with Kimi, we had a lot of probably unnecessary penalties and issues that cropped up. And it's interesting to see kind of just, for me, that's the big difference, right? It's kind of the scenarios that these drivers have been in versus those who are the rookies and how they've adapted to it. But I think, yeah, Antonelli's got to be the standout rookie for me so far. I think he's done really, really well with the car that he's got.
Yeah, he has. He's scored points I believe he scored points in every single race that he's participating, except for maybe one, maybe. I think at Bahrain it might have been a P11.
Mm.
But I mean, he's pretty much lived up to the hype. I mean, there was a lot of hype put on him in the preseason, particularly from his own team boss. But I think that he's lived up to that. But I would also say Isaac Hadjar, for me, has been the most impressive rookie because considering where he was after that first race, crashing on the formation lap, and for him to recover the way that he's did, and numerous Q3 appearances, scoring points, I think he's impressed me the most because I didn't follow him much in F2, but hearing from what everybody was saying that he was kind of a little bit of a hothead on the radio, and he's been very calm and composed and shown a great rate of speed too. So for me, he's been the most impressive so far.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess, I'm curious to get your thoughts as well. Looking at Mercedes, now we're talking about the big four at the front. I feel that Russell's also had a pretty good start to the season. Maybe not out and out, race wins that we would have expected, but he seems to be there or amongst it that when stuff does go wrong, thinking back to Suzuka, that, he's in the right place to kind of pounce. And I wonder if Mercedes are maybe going to be, in the contention for the title fight just by being consistent. We're not seeing the wild swings in performance like we have done with Red Bull and even to a certain extent Ferrari, right? So yeah, it's been a good start to the season for George as well, I think.
It certainly has. It's definitely Mercedes' best start in this ground effect rules era, at any rate. It's the most successful season that they've had, or the most successful start to a season that they've had. So it will be consistency will be key. But they're kind of always. I'm not exactly sure if they still fully yet understand this current rule set because they always kind of
Mm.
seem to have these false dawns and then they kind of dip back in performance as well. But so far, like you said, they have been consistent. But I think this year it's really going to come down to. I think McLaren are definitely the clear favorites here for the constructors' championship, and we can kind of get into these little conversations now as we see Antonelli's also out on track on a flying lap. Verstappen's still the quickest, and two Williams actually behind there with Sainz and Albon. But I also do think that we've got some upgrades also this weekend. Red Bull have brought a new floor that only Verstappen will be running. And that's the start of a big upgrade package for Red Bull. There's another one coming in Imola for in 2 weeks' time. So this will be interesting because yes, McLaren have had the fastest car and the best car, but I mean, what's your sense? Because for me, it doesn't feel like they've dominated, even though they've won the majority of the races so far. But I feel like they aren't running away with it as we would have expected because Verstappen's only sitting 12 points back in that drivers' championship.
Yeah, definitely. I was listening to the drivers' press conference yesterday, and I think Lando was talking about the fact that McLaren are doing some work on making the car more drivable for him. Now, I know Lando has always kind of had a bit of an issue when it comes to qualifying. Q1, Q2, he always seems to be right on it, and then Q3 is usually where we see a dip, and a dip can be as little as moving from kind of projected first to projected second. But obviously, he's not entirely happy with the car and how it kind of sits. But then you listen to Piastri, and he seems to be like, yeah, the car's working really well. I'm really happy. So it's kind of a tale of two stories, I guess, for these guys. And I think with the season as it progresses, like you say, with Red Bull bringing the upgrades, the pressure is only going to mount. And then McLaren have to work out as well. Are they going to offer any one driver kind of priority when it comes to this? And I'm curious to your thought. Obviously, we've seen incidents play out with McLaren in the past where perhaps their decisiveness has kind of costed them. So I guess if you're in Zach Brown's shoes, curious, like at what point do you make the decision we're backing one driver and who do you back for the season?
Yeah, it's a good question and good timing because we see Zach Brown on the live feed there and Norris also out on track. But I mean, at what point? Because right now it's still so close. For me, you just kind of let them race and you let them get
Hmm.
on with it. But the problem is we've already seen that from this year already on McLaren. I thought that they had learned from those mistakes from 2024. But in Japan, for example, they were indecisive. There was two McLarens against the one Red Bull,
Yeah.
and they just ended up copying the same strategy for following Verstappen into the pits on the same lap. So that was a little bit strange to me. I know some people suggested maybe have them switch the cars and things like that, let Piastri have a go, but yeah, I don't know. I think if it gets to sort of the middle of the season and let's say Piastri has a sizable points gap over Norris, then you have to start favoring the lead driver in terms of upgrades, in terms of the who gets the first call on the pit stops. But Norris is going to have his work cut out for him because last year he was just battling Verstappen, but this year he's going to have to battle his teammate as well. And Piastri looks like to be a handful as well. Not maybe as much as Verstappen, but certainly almost at that level too.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's it, right? Every driver says they want to be world champion, but I feel at least with the car underneath him, Piastri's putting a real effort into trying to achieve that this year. And yeah, I wouldn't want to be Zach Brown, put it that way, because it is, like you say, quite a as it ebbs and flows, even by sort of 10, 20 points, there's not too much you can decide. But at some point, someone has to pull the trigger and kind of see what will happen, really.
Yeah, for sure. And he said it too. He's kind of come out and already foreshadowed it, let's say, where he's saying that it's inevitable that the two teammates are going to come together eventually, which, I mean, it probably is true, but Let's wait and see. I mean, they're both pretty good racers, but when the championship is on the line, all that stuff kind of goes out the window anyway. So it should be interesting to see. But yeah, this is kind of the 1 year on from the Miami Grand Prix last season, where McLaren
Mm.
brought that big upgrade. Lando Norris won his first ever Grand Prix, and then basically that started this whole McLaren resurgence. They became champions, and now, of course, they both won two in the championship, and they're looking pretty likely to probably win at least the constructors championship, if not even the drivers championship. But I think some other drivers will have a say on that. So 15 minutes into the session here, guys. Backmarkers F1 Show live stream. I'm Chris Cato. Alongside me, Josh Martin here from the CEO of SimStaff. Great you could join us along. If you guys have any questions or comments, drop them in the live chat. We are keeping an eye on that, so we will be answering any questions or comments that you guys have. And yeah, we're here with you guys for another 45 minutes here in this FP1 session. Of course, this is another sprint weekend, so the only practice session these drivers get, so it's going to be incredibly busy at the moment. Currently, we have 18 drivers on track. The two Saubers, the only ones in the garages at the moment. Yuki Tsunoda is on a flying lap. He's sitting down in P12. Russell quickest so far with a 128.4. All drivers on the medium tire except for the two Racing Bulls of Hadjar and Lawson. So, yeah, still pretty early days here. I don't think, I'm not sure actually. We'll probably maybe see the soft tire a little bit later on just to see if these drivers are going to get a look in before qualifying later today.
Yeah, definitely. I've just been watching the timing. Yuki out there setting, personal bests in each of the sectors. I think he's really getting there, getting to grips with the car. I think he was being asked yesterday in the driver's press conference, what are the differences between, the Racing Bull and what he's got now. And he was kind of explaining that it's not necessarily that the cars are drastically different per se, but there's kind of small, just incremental changes in driving style that need to be made. So I think I've been really impressed with kind of how he's stepped up. But what I wanted to ask about, Chris, was obviously Liam Lawson. I think a driver who was already kind of down and got kicked, when he was down. And I wonder mentally, kind of a driver like that, how you regain your confidence, because he's back into the junior team. He's got that kind of safety net. But I think, as we all know, Red Bull are nothing short of ruthless when they need to be. And so the question, I guess, is, whether it's this season or next season, where does Liam go? Where does he do? Do you think his journey with Red Bull is over, or do you think there's potential for him to take that seat back?
I mean, at Red Bull, probably not, and it's probably better for him not to
Mm.
go back there, as we see with other drivers like Albon, for example, and Gasly. I don't even know if they would have gone back had they had the choice. So, I mean, it's unfortunate because I don't think he should have gotten the seat in the first place. I think that promoting him
Oh,
was,
okay. Controversial opinion time.
yeah. I mean, yeah, because if you look at it, yes, he had an impressive run with Racing Bulls or V-Carb, whatever they were called in the last two seasons when he stepped in on short notice. But I would say that when you look at it, the fact that Red Bull never promoted or even gave Sonoda a chance, even though he had so many Grand
Mhm.
Prix under his belt and showed so much good pace, it just didn't make sense to me why they wouldn't give him a chance. And again, if you look at what eventually did happen, why not give Sonoda the preseason, the full winter to get up to speed with Red Bull, start, and you give him the first 6 to 10 races, and if he doesn't do well, then you can promote Lawson. And then at the very least, you have a driver in Lawson that you haven't totally defeated with
Mm.
his confidence. And then at least Sonoda goes back to the junior team, builds up his confidence again, and then he's back to basically where he started. But now, as you said, Liam Lawson is kind of down in the gutters. He's starting to show a little bit better form in the last 2 3 weekends, but it hasn't exactly been like a super return to form to him when he went back to the Racing Bulls. So you got to feel for him because 2 races into your F1, I mean, there's not much you can do in those 2 races to impress, anyways. But it's a tough situation. I think Sonoda is doing a good job. It's just going to take him a hell of a lot more races to start showing more of that raw speed and getting closer to max. But overall, I think considering the circumstances, he's done pretty good. So we'll see. We'll see. I mean, he had the 2 weeks in break in between the last race and here in
Mm.
Miami, so I think that helps him a little bit integrate with the team more.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess that's the thing, right? Is he doesn't necessarily need to be challenging for race wins. Like, obviously, it would help Red Bull if he was, but when you consider they were basically at the point of having a second driver who was scoring no points, anything more than zero is now a positive, right? We all know that Max can do wonders behind the car, but ultimately, it's two drivers that win the constructors, and yeah, you kind of feel one half of the garage is maybe a bit more demoralized than the other. So fingers crossed he can really pull it together for the rest of the season.
For sure, absolutely. And I mean, he's a popular character too, and I'm glad that he finally got the chance because he deserved a chance with the bigger team. And it looked like for a
Mm.
while he wasn't going to, and it was kind of in limbo too, right? The Red Bull sort of didn't want him anymore. Now Honda's leaving, so he doesn't have the Japanese connection anymore, and it kind of felt like, okay, where's he going to end up? But now, if he has a solid, next for the solid rest of the season, he might actually end up getting a 2-year deal at Red Bull, which that would be quite the turnaround for him.
Yeah, definitely. And just on the topic of Red Bull camp, I see ex-driver Carlos Sainz seems to be going quite well. He's currently P4, and I think the Williams has, really come alive. Obviously, I know they've been focusing on development for next year already. They've signaled that they're making the jump quite early. James Vowles obviously telling them to kind of throw everything out and start from scratch. But I think it's interesting to see there, right? Albon's gone from having no sort of benchmark as a driver to compete with, and has now got Sainz, who's obviously doing a good job. And I do wonder, under the right circumstances, whether it's a wet race, whether it's a safety car, could Williams get a podium or even a race win this year? I think it's not out of the question, but I don't know under what circumstance it would need to fall.
Man, I hope so. It's good to see Williams doing well. I mean, it's good for the sport, and they've been on such a long journey to try and get back to the top. So I would agree. I think at least a podium is on the cards this year because the car looks good, and like you said before, they're going well so far in the early stages of this session. Sainz in fourth place, Albon currently on eighth, but he's setting personal best in the first and second sector, and he's going to cross the line just here in a moment, and yeah, actually just jumps up there to P3. So we've got a Williams in third and fifth, and a lot of laps on the board for them too, both with 11. So yeah, I think it's going to be good for Williams. And now I think with more races under his belt, Sainz is going to get more comfortable, more adjusted to the car, how it needs to drive. Of course, Mercedes power unit, he's never driven it before this season,
Mm.
so certainly something is on the cards. If at least no podiums, they might secure a top 5 in the constructors championship.
Yeah, definitely. And I know we all will speak about it, but it can obviously make quite a sizable impact for them. Okay, they lose a bit of wind tunnel time, but in terms of investment into the team, and even if you look at the number of sponsors that are on the car now, it's kind
Yeah.
of gone from being that empty blue canvas to now being kind of sticker bombed, which is great. So for Sainz, I guess it's quite a nice season. He just needs to prove that he can drive the car, not necessarily drive it quickly, because the real focus is for 2026, right?
Definitely, and as you mentioned, they've already stopped development for this season. They're focusing on 2026, but they're, at the same time, they're still showing a good rate of speed for this season, which is great news for them. So yeah, good news for Williams fans out there. If you guys are watching, your team's doing pretty well to start this season as well. A little bit of a lull here in this FP1 session here. We've got a lot of the cars have returned to the pits after the first initial runs on the medium tire. A lot of laps completed, though. If you guys see that on the left-hand side of your screen, Hadjar's got 12 laps on the board, for example. Sainz and Albon as well, 12 laps. Leclerc and the Ferrari, another 10 laps on the board. Carlos Sainz actually has just gone quicker. He goes up to second place with a 128.3 also on the medium tire. And he's got the fastest speed trap time at 338 kilometers an hour. So we've got.
I always like seeing the cars go through. Sorry, only going to go.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm watching. I was watching obviously one of the Williams on boards there going through turns sort of 3, 4, 5, and 6, and I find it's always such a good sequence of corners. Kind of reminds me a little bit Silverstone-esque, but I feel like in sequences like that is really when you see the cars at their best and aerodynamically at their best as well. I know obviously, Chris, you were turning some laps virtually the other day around the circuit. How does Miami kind of sit in your rankings of tracks? Is it one that you enjoy?
It's not bad. I think it's maybe growing on me a little bit. At the first, it was kind of a weird little clunky track, but actually, when you get set into it and you get the setup correctly and you get the car working, it does flow pretty well. You have kind of two different ones. Your sector one is more of a front limited sector, and then sector two is more rear limited. You have that really clunky Mickey Mouse chicane, which is incredibly slow, and it has a little bit of elevation as well too. But it's not too bad. I mean, it's not the worst track I've ever driven on a simulator. But I guess for a track that's built around the stadium, essentially in a car park, it's not too bad. Let's say it that way. But I think maybe I should ask you. You are the expert here, of course, being the CEO of SimStaff, and I'm sure that you've driven this circuit many a times, and also seen many people driven in their simulators that your company has set up for them. So what is your thoughts on Miami, the Miami
Yeah, I think
Autodrome?
that was a pretty fair analysis. I know it's obviously been renewed for the next 10 years, so I think that kind of speaks, I guess, to the commercial value that the circuit brings. But I think, yeah, like you say, that first sector, front limited, but very, very good. Obviously, we see quite a high volume of safety cars here, both in the virtual and real world, so it always throws a nice mix. But I do kind of feel that, if you come out with that kind of hairpin, it's, well, sort of the wide double apex, I suppose, at turn 8 all the way up to turn 11, and then you've got the back straight from 16 through 17. There's a lot of empty space, I feel, and I think that's the challenge. I saw, talking to Sims, I saw that they were doing laps of the new Madrid proposed circuit as well, and kind of felt this, it was the same, that with these street circuits you are obviously limited by the geography, right? So you can't get the same quality corners, whether it's Eau Rouge, whether it's the banking at Zandvoort. And I feel that's, yeah, perhaps something that misses, is missing from these new circuits as they come in, these street circuits. But obviously it will throw up some form of drama. But yeah, Miami, I'll give it a 6 out of 10. It's not bad, but it's not great.
Yeah, that's totally fair. I mean, unfortunately, as you mentioned, the commercial aspect is the only thing that matters to the bosses in Formula One right now. So we're stuck with it, and let's just hope it doesn't get worse. As long as we can keep Coda on the calendar, then we should be okay. But actually, the funny thing is, we still have a little bit of a lull here. We can go off on a little bit of tangent here. You spoke of that Madrid. Did you see the onboard lap that they presented, the official one? Who drove that? I
That
mean,
was criminal driving.
I mean, sometimes when I do a hot lap preparing for a video, I'll do a decent one, but if I'm not happy with it, I'll keep driving and driving until I get the right one. But this one, they just put some random guy in there and just let him struggle with that. My goodness.
Yeah, it was painful. I mean, I don't know. I've not seen if it was somebody actually driving, but to me, it looked very stereotypical of like AI doing the lap, where it kind of cuts across a corner and reacts really quickly and stuff. So I'm hoping that was the case because, yeah, like you said, I think anybody, even for your own ego, right? You'd want to do a couple of good laps and then use one of those, not just like send it cold tires and see what happens.
Yeah, that's a good. Like, I would never publish that. Like, put that on publicly. I mean, I am a better driver. I'm not the best, but I am a little bit better than that. But I would never put that out in public.
No, definitely. And I think there was obviously we had Valencia, right? That used to be a good street circuit. That was quite entertaining. So again, I get that there's the commercial powers that be, but I feel that there's a lot of candidates for good circuits in that part of the world if you did want to go out there. So it's, yeah, a strange choice for me, but I guess we'll see what happens if it comes through. Obviously, I know we were supposed to go racing in Vietnam as well, right? And that fell through. So it's just the nature of whether the circuit can get ready as much as F1 can bring the circus to town.
Yeah, for sure. And we'll see. I mean, it's an ever growing calendar. There's obviously the talk of rotational races as well. I think some of the favorite European venues like Spa will end up in a rotation, but at the very least, we won't lose them permanently, hopefully. But we'll see how it goes. So yeah, we're just about half an hour down here in this session. Yeah, these sessions fly by when you're on these live streams. It's crazy. But George Russell, Mercedes, currently the fastest at the moment, the 28.0. His teammate actually not far behind there, about a tenth and a half there, Kimi Antonelli. And we got Carlos Sainz sitting in P3, Lando Norris in fourth, and the other Williams of Albon rounding at the top five there. And for Williams on a 28.4. Most drivers still running that medium tire. Maybe towards the end of the session, we're going to get some drivers getting a look in on that softer tire just ahead of sprint qualifying later today. Of course, later, this will be evening or afternoon, depending where you are in the world. They have sprint qualifying, which is going to set the grid for the sprint race tomorrow. And then after the sprint race, we will have, of course, qualifying for the full Grand Prix. Just quickly, what's your opinions on the sprint weekend, kind of the formats and different things like that, as we've had them now for a couple of years. So what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I think I was apprehensive at first, but I think it's definitely added something to the mix, and it just allows that extra variable for stuff to go wrong, whether that is in qualifying or it is during the race that shakes up the order. And you know, we complain as much about there being one-stop races and this kind of stuff, but if it means that you can kind of put a cork in the bottle, maybe for example, one of the Saubers ends up further up the field, and that causes a bit of drama. That can still be just as entertaining for everybody, and also gives the drivers just a chance to practice their wheel-to-wheel racing as well, I suppose, doesn't it? So, yeah, I'm a big fan. I'm not sure on the circuits they choose for it, but I think a street circuit's probably a good place to be doing that. Would they do it in Monaco? Probably not, but I do think it's a good format. What do you think, too, Chris? Do you like it?
They're not bad. I mean, they grew on me a little bit at the beginning. I hated them, honestly, just because I don't know. I guess I'm just traditional with the way that it is. But I think the recent changes that they made to it in terms of having kind of a specific qualifying actually just for the race and then for the sprint itself is a better way to go. And also changing the parc fermé rules, so opening that up so drivers and teams can make changes to the cars, I think adds a little bit more variety. I don't mind the sprints as long as we have, let's say, a maximum of 4 per year. I know it's up to 6, which is still
Mm.
reasonable. But I think the only thing that I don't like about the sprints is that it kind of takes away from the anticipation from the big race on Sunday. And that's the only thing is that, on Saturday you see the lights out and the way we go. And then when you see it on Sunday, it's not as exciting and not as you're not as anticipating it as much as you would on a normal race weekend. But it's okay. Every now and again, I don't mind it.
No, definitely, definitely. I was just watching their Piastri's on board through the Mickey Mouse chicane, as you call it, and it's amazing to see just how confident he is in that car. He's properly striking the curbs on both apexes, and doesn't seem to be worrying about the car that's underneath him, which I think is always a sign of a driver who's got confidence in their car when they're hitting the curbs like that. So, I know Russell. We got a Mercedes 1-2 at the moment. It's only free practice, but it does seem that at least up front, there's what, half a second covering the top six, which is quite spicy, really. So
Yeah, it is, and McLaren should do well around here like they did last year. Maybe, I mean, with Red Bull, I'm not exactly sure because, for example, that chicane that we just talked about is kind of the Achilles heel of the Red Bull in those slow speed corners. They're extremely stiff going over those curbs, so it kind of upsets the balance, which is tricky for them. But for example, in Sector One, it's maybe more suited to their car. So it'd be interesting what this track would be like driving it in a different generation of F1 car, something that's a little bit more lighter and more nimble.
mm.
I think would probably be a little bit more suitable for this track.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. We had a training day. SimStaff had a training day recently, and we were hosted by the team at Williams Sim Racing, which was really nice. And they've got the experience center there, which is kind of like a collection of old Williams F1 cars. Funny enough, and it's amazing seeing as you go through the history from the 80s to present day, just how big the cars have got, and particularly in I think it was 2018, when they all had that weird front end noses that was kind of going on, or whatever time period that was. Just the size of those cars, and you think about a circuit like Monaco, they're just almost too big to be kind of driving there. So there is something to be said for, like you say, the old school cars, the size difference, and perhaps how that would even change the dynamic of racing that we see today.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, they're massive, and if you haven't seen one up close or in person, you never actually realize how huge they
Mm.
are. I mean, they look big on TV or on if you look at them in photos, but when you see them in person, you really get to realize just how massive they are, and you kind of appreciate the accuracy that these drivers have. Like I know Monaco's always like, "Oh, Monaco's boring," but to be honest with you, being able to thread a car like that through some of those Monaco corners, like we got to keep the that race on the calendar just for that spectacle.
Definitely, definitely. I'm just watching the live timing as well. Hamilton, he's now P10 at the moment. It's looking like, but a driver who even yesterday in the press conference as well, I believe was saying that it takes time to learn to get used to a car. I think a lot of fans obviously expecting the Lewis of old to jump in the car and jump straight to the top, but. How have you found his season, Chris? I think obviously Charles being the benchmark that he's obviously been benched against, but I feel like he's not had as bad a season as perhaps it looks on paper, but certainly a lot to be learned for Lewis this season, I suppose.
Yeah, it's about. I mean, it's kind of what I expected. I know that the hype of the preseason for his arrival at Ferrari was obviously unlike anything that
Mm.
we've ever seen before, and probably will never see again. But at the end of the day, when all that's done, that's all great. But you gotta perform and deliver out on track, which he hasn't done so far. But it hasn't been a huge surprise for me because he did struggle at times last year at Mercedes and through in this ground effect era. I think that's just that. It's these types of cars don't exactly suit his type of driving style, and he just hasn't been able to adapt to it as well as other drivers have. But at the end of the day, the problem for him is that he's one of the greatest drivers ever, so he's going to be measured by that. And that's why the critics are going to come out and the criticisms will be loud because he is obviously one of, if not the greatest driver in history. And so he's going to be obviously looked at much closer and through a much bigger lens than some of these other drivers who switch teams. So, I mean, yeah, if you want to jump in, if you want to say it.
No, I was about to say I completely agree with what you're saying. I think you've worded it really well. And, the Ferrari has always, it's weird. I heard someone say the other day, you kind of, if you go to Ferrari, that you kind of signing away your championship contention. I think that was probably a bit of a harsh comment, but I do feel we've not really seen a Ferrari car that has been to the same level as competitive improvement as we have with Mercedes or McLaren. I think they've always been there, but not there, if you know what I mean. It's been a weird position for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're just getting a replay here of Lando Norris heading down into the penultimate corner there, that little chicane, and it looks like the Haas of Esteban Ocon. Yeah,
Ooh.
ooh, that was a little too close to comfort.
Definitely, definitely. I think Haas have had a good season. I think I'm impressed with Haas and how they've improved. Obviously, they've gone from being, at least as I remember it, kind of back of the grid, but they're definitely moving forwards in the right direction. And how do you think that's going to play out? Obviously, with the Cadillac, with Cadillac looking to join the grid, obviously another American brand looking to kind of put their impact on that. Do you think that's going to, rise all ships, or do you think we're going to see a real power struggle between the two teams to kind of cement themselves as the Americans representative team, I suppose?
Yeah, I'm not really sure how it's going to plan out because Haas's future has always kind of been up in the air, especially the last few years. They've been struggling a lot financially and different things like that. Now with the whole tariff situation, I did that in a recent video as well, just talking about it, that they are feeling the effects of that already. And if the situation gets worse, they might be forced to even reconsider their F1 future in terms of either Gene Haas selling the team or different things like that. So their future is kind of an interesting spot because they've got that sort of sponsorship deal now with Toyota. So you've kind of got the door open maybe there for Toyota to get a bigger hand in Haas, if not maybe a full takeover in the near future. But with Cadillac coming in, it should be interesting to see two American F1 teams, which is going to be pretty crazy, considering as we never usually had any American representation in F1. And just interesting on a side note on that, we have a lot of Cadillac representatives in Miami. I think they're doing some sort of event or reveal maybe for their car next season in terms of livery or something like that. Also, Sergio Perez is rumored to be in the building in Miami, so make of that what you will. But yeah, otherwise for Haas though for this season, I mean currently in this session sitting P11 and P14, they're on a good run of form, so they're looking good even for this weekend too.
Yeah, definitely. I'm just watching a replay of Lando, like you said, on Ocon there, and the closing speed. I don't think the cameras did it justice, but he was properly on him, and I think Ocon just obviously not looking at where Lando was. That was, yeah, very very close. As I see now, Hamilton's back out another lap, and again, a driver who's, I think, obviously we're earlier in this season in terms of the development cycle for Ferrari as well. How much they'll commit to this season, I'm not too sure, but it seems to be finding his rhythm today. And obviously, the sprint races have favored him this season so far as well. He's had a pretty good run when they have been about, I suppose.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, he's the sprint winner, of course, in China, and looking to maybe do it again this weekend. He's had a personal best in the first sector on this current lap, but slower there in the middle sector. Hamilton currently down in 10th. His teammate Charles Leclerc in third. The gap between the two teammates about 3.5, almost 4 tenths, and both drivers there on that medium tire, the C4. Leclerc with 15 laps on the board. Hamilton just crossing the line now. He improves to 8th place. He's got 14 laps on the board.
It's looking just over a second separating the top 11, which I know has been the story of the season, really, isn't it? That just it shows how important it is for not only getting your laps in practice to understand the car, the circuit, how they intertwine, but also for qualifying. It can really throw up some curveballs and really see. I'm looking at Alonso's down there in P13. Chris, I don't know how you felt about Aston Martin, but I feel that, a very quiet season for them. Obviously, I know the impending Adrian Newey being involved now. Obviously, we're not going to see probably an impact until next season on the cars. But yeah, been a bit disappointed, I think, with Aston Martin, knowing the resources they've got behind them. I think it's a surprise to see really Alonso and Stroll struggling so much at the moment.
Yeah, for sure. Just before I touch on that, I see the comment there from Elsa Fernandez in the chat saying Leclerc is sixth. Yes, Charles Leclerc sitting in P6, the lead Ferrari, about 3.5 tenths almost off the pace of leader so far, George Russell, with 20 minutes to go. But yeah, on that Aston Martin talk, so they're currently sitting 13th and 18th in this session so far. But I mean, disappointing. There's no other way to say it. It's so sad because seeing that the start to that 2023 season they had, especially with Alonso at the helm, getting all those podiums, almost winning races and getting pole positions too. It was great to see him fighting at the front again. And I honestly thought, like, wow, this is a great potential for them to maybe be in the position that McLaren is right now, fighting for championships, winning championships. And then they just totally fell off. I mean, their development is totally brutal. So they've got to get that sorted out. The new wind tunnel is finally online, and as you mentioned, they've got Adrian Newey. So 2026 will really be. If you're, I'm wearing an Aston Martin cap right now, at the moment, and you're gonna have to wait if you're an Aston Martin fan out there to at least 2026 with the new Honda partnership coming in as well to hopefully at least see some results. But I'm not sure. I mean, I don't know what your thoughts are because if you look at it now, McLaren is so strong. We've got the usual other big three teams: Mercedes, Ferrari, Red Bull. Is there room for another team at the front, at the top?
It's a good question. I think, the more teams fighting out, the better, right? But equally, the resources of the bigger teams, they have that ability to be kind of how I describe it, of being used to winning. You look at Red Bull and Ferrari, obviously got plenty of wins. Williams themselves, obviously, being a good example. But I think a lot of what we're seeing with McLaren is still them learning how to win races and learning to make the key decisions that kind of influence how you do win races. So whether Aston Martin could do that, they obviously have Alonso, but it's not just the driver who's going to be the one commanding that decision. It's going to be the strategists. It's going to be all the team in the back end at the factory making those key inferences from the data. I would love to see them up there, but I don't know. I don't think any team really can just jump up there. They might have the car that can move up the grid, but they can't necessarily win races. And that's always the challenge with Formula One, is it is man and machine and everyone else around it as well that makes all the difference.
That's for sure. And they've also got the other side of it as well, which they've got the two-time world champion Fernando Alonso in their car, but that second driver, let's say, has been lacking at certain times in his stint at Aston Martin. What do you think the future is there for Lance Stroll? Of course, his father being essentially the majority owner of the team and an Aston Martin group as well. Were rumors of Max Verstappen potentially joining the team. I mean, at what do you think that there will ever be a day where Lawrence Stroll is gonna talk to his son and say, "Hey, listen, you're not meeting performance expectations. We have to make room for Verstappen or be it another type of driver." Do you think that will ever happen, or is Stroll just gonna have that seat as long as he wants?
I could see it happening if the right driver came along. I know, like you say, there was obviously rumors of Max getting a very lucrative contract offer. But I think the other side of it is that, Lance isn't necessarily a bad driver or a slow driver. He has won a race, he has won in junior categories. And, how much of this is the car that's hiding his performance? Obviously, he has made some, what I would argue are rookie mistakes in previous races. But I do think when it matters, he can string things together. It's a good question, and I don't know. Like I say, I think if the right driver came to the market, I could see it happening for sure. And where Lance goes after that, there's still other teams on the grid that I'm sure would be more than happy to kind of take him as well. So yeah, it'll be an interesting one. I think he's obviously had, like you said, a couple of seasons that are just kind of not amazing and kind of just sat there. And it's how long is a piece of string, I suppose, in that regard. But all it takes is one good result, and then the conversation swings the other way. And it's what can he do with the right car underneath him?
Yeah, we'll see what his F1 future is going to be. He's currently sitting 18th at the moment in the pits with 17 laps completed on the board. And fewest laps actually completed so far is Nico Hulkenberg in the Sauber. He's only got 7 laps completed. I'm not sure if there's any sort of issues with his car or anything, but only 7 laps on the board. But yeah, it's been a very busy session here. We're coming up on 15 minutes to go here at FP1 in Miami, here on the Backmarkers F1 Show live stream. So far, we've got a Mercedes 1-2 leading at the moment. Carlos Sainz in the Williams in P3, and two McLarens rounding out the top five with Piastri and Norris fourth and fifth. So, I mean, pretty steady so far. I guess obviously this is only FP1, so there's not too much to read into the times. But the good thing is we're not going to have to wait too long to see what the actual performance is going to be like, because we've got sprint qualifying coming in just a couple hours' time.
Just having a look. Ollie Behrman seems to be not improving on this lap per se, but getting the laps in, which is important. And a driver who, obviously had that standout race with Ferrari when he stepped in for Sainz, and I think has shown a lot of potential, behind the wheel and when he's out on track as well. So I think, if you're at the team at Haas, you got to be happy with your driver lineup. I don't think I'd necessarily make any changes there, and it's just one of those, I suppose, for Ollie getting himself more laps behind the wheel and making sure that he just learns the nuances of this circuit. Obviously, not a lot of sort of asphalt abrasion as we talk about, but a lot of track evolution, and even timing your qualifying runs can have a huge influence there as well. So I guess that, I don't know how you feel about this, Chris, but there's so much to learn for these drivers now, not just in terms of the cars and the systems powering them, but also the nuances of the circuits. With such a big calendar this year, there's so much more to learn, isn't there?
There definitely is, and it makes it even harder on a sprint weekend like this when you can't really ease into the session. You've got 60 minutes just to make sure that you've got the setup correct, at least for the next day or two, and then you're straight on into a competitive session, which isn't easy. I'm sure you yourself as a sim racer and others out there will know how difficult that is. You want as much track time as you can to get comfortable, and then you get yourself into that qualifying session, and then you feel that you're ready to go. But it is difficult here, and of course, local time there in Miami, it's around past 1 o'clock, so scorching hot temperatures. Track temps will be very hot, and of course, it's difficult to even read so far of what the tire wear is going to be like, and different things like that. So we've got currently Nico Hulkenberg, who's out on the soft tire, so I think he's going to be the first driver to go for more of a performance run here on this C5 compound. So it should be interesting to see where this will put him. And coming up into the last 10 minutes or so, I'm wondering if we're going to get more drivers coming out on that soft tire just to do a little bit of a quali sim. And it looks like that Sauber is also, yeah. I think I'm seeing that correctly. He's got some Flovis on the left rear wing.
It's exactly what I was looking at there. I was just making sure I was seeing that correctly. It's
Yeah.
yeah, interesting to see them running it, trying to learn what they can about the car, right?
Yeah, I guess they can't run the green Flovis, right?
I tell you what, on the topic of liveries, whilst we're here, how do you rate the Ferrari livery? I think we were talking about the
Oh,
commercialism of Formula One, but uh, I'm a bit disappointed. I'm not going to lie.
oh, horrible. I mean, awful. I mean, it's just, yeah. HP is probably the worst thing to happen to Ferrari since, I don't know, my because they were
Yeah.
teasing like the special merchandise and different things like that. I was like, oh, like maybe they're gonna come out, and then it just looks, ah, yeah. I don't even know.
Yeah,
Speechless.
definitely. Definitely. No, I mean, I like obviously what Kick Sauber have done. It looks quite nice with the splashes. And then you've obviously got Racing Bulls. I think it's technically a special, like Peach Edition livery is what they're calling it. But yeah, I mean, it looks quite smart, and it's nice to see. I like the fact that obviously the teams do like to play with the liveries. Obviously, I remember back in sort of 2013, 2014, we had the drivers who were changing helmet designs every race, and then they were getting fined because they were changing helmets too
Yeah.
often. But I think, it is obviously a visual sport as much as anything else, and it's nice to see the teams having some fun, even if they don't quite always get it right. It's yeah, one of those nuances, and I'm sure there's been some liveries through the years, Chris, that you kind of looked at and gone, yeah, that's a standout, and you almost remember the livery more than the car that it was on.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, just off the top of my head, that golf livery in Monaco for McLaren a few years back,
Mm.
that's always a standout. And so, I mean, I'm glad that we're seeing more paint on the cars this year. I think it was last year, right, where a lot of them were just basically, black carbon, and that was mostly it, trying to save weight and things like that. So it's nice to get some a variety of color here. So, and I guess for commentators, it's easier too. A bright pink and a bright green car, it's much easier to spot. So yeah, but we've got the classic racing green livery here on that Aston Martin as Fernando Alonso is on a push lap at the moment on that soft tire, personal best in the first sector, and it looks like he will be improving his time here in 14th. So we'll see where that puts him.
Yeah, definitely. We're still 2 tenths off George though in sector one, which is screaming forms. Maybe Aston have gone for a sort of lower downforce setup just to trim it. Obviously, you're going to suffer for that more in sector one and sector two, sector three is when it's going to come back to you. But 3 tenths off there in sector two as well. So yeah, that Aston is not looking the quickest car this weekend. It could be quite a long weekend for Alonso.
Yeah, absolutely, and pointless so far in 2025. It's he hasn't been pointless in the first 5 races of the season since his 2017 McLaren season. So it's been quite a while. But as we predicted, a lot of drivers now out on the softs. Carlos Sainz in the Williams, he's out on the softs. He just came through that chicane and out on the back straight, and he's currently purple in the middle sector, 4 tenths up. And so this will be a good lap here from Carlos Sainz. I find that breaking point there after you get down from the long straight, that's a tricky one. It's very easy to understeer off the apex there and almost end up in the wall as Science goes quickest now.
Yeah, definitely. I saw Lando's had a few lockups there. I think Duan has also had a lockup there. So it is one of those, and particularly if you get a nice clean run out of the last corner before that, so, you are carrying more speed in. If you've got slipstream, you're carrying even more speed. And that can these guys are very very good at what they do, but it can obviously shift your breaking point by a couple of meters, and that's when things start to go wrong. But yeah, nice to see Sainz up the top leaderboard there. I mean, the Williams has always been notoriously quite a slippy, quite a fast car, but I think this is just going to show that now they've got the rest of the package kind of tidied up. They might be able to string something together, and it's obviously only practice, only 9 minutes or so left. But yeah, great to see for Williams, and I'm sure they're happy with provisional 1-2 per se.
Yeah, yeah, looking good so far, and it's Science actually the quicker Williams this time. The gap about almost 3 tenths we could say between the two Williams teammates. So let's see who else is out on the track. We've got Verstappen's out there. It looks like he is. Let's see. Can we see which tire he's on? Yeah, Verstappen's also out on the softs. And we've got Leclerc, who's also put on a set of soft tires. Lewis Hamilton still in the pits. And so we're going to see some performance runs here. Oscar Piastri also on the soft as well. His teammate also still in the garage. And Yuki Tsunoda, too, is going to be doing a run on the softs here. So it's going to be a busy end to this session with about 8.5 minutes to go. But we'll get a little bit of a picture here on the pecking order as Isaac Hadjar has just actually set the purple first sector.
I'm just having a look. The safety car probability for this circuit is 67%. So, Chris, I'm going to put an early request on you. Do you think we're going to see a safety car this weekend in either the main or the sprint race? Do you think that's possible?
Oof. I'm gonna say no. We're not gonna see it this year. The drivers have been really well behaved in 2025, so I'm gonna say no. Although if it does rain on
Okay, and I'm going
Sunday,
to take that comment. Oh, there you go. There you go. Okay.
well, Verstappen's going strong on this lap. He's fastest in that first sector, and let's see his middle sector here. Not the fastest of anybody, but he's still going quickest at the moment. And actually, another interesting point there, Josh, is neither. So there's been 3 Miami Grand Prix so far, and none of them have been won from the front row. An interesting stat there.
Oh, wow. Okay, that is an interesting fact. I know it's not the longest run in the world to turn one. It's about just, I think, around 200 meters or so, maybe slightly less. But yeah, that's a bit of a surprise. So perhaps, yeah, could, I guess in some ways qualifying maybe isn't indicative then of what's going to happen as Max goes top of the leaderboards as we'd expect. And even just through that last through the chicane we were talking about, turns sort of 14 and 15, he is a lot less sort of heavy on striking the curbs compared to what we've seen from Piastri. So whether that's just a driver preference or a ride height difference, yeah, interesting to see already those deviations in the drivers. And I'm sure Max will be happy. He looks pretty comfortable, but yeah, it could be something that we see on race day, maybe has a bit of an impact, because if you hit that curb wrong and the car doesn't settle, it's going to compromise you not only at turn 15, but also 16 and then onto that big back straight at the end as well.
Yeah, that's a great thing. That's a great point because it's kind of the old racing adage of slow in and fast out because you could take a lot of speed into that slow speed corner, but then you're going to lose a lot on the exit, and you end up actually losing more down that long back straight. But the McLaren seems a lot more compliant over those bigger curves and then the slow speed corners. So it's going to be interesting to see as Piastri's just going to cross the line here. And oh yeah, he goes quickest so far, about 3.5 tenths up on Charles Leclerc. So good lap there from Leclerc though, even though it's a pretty big gap to McLaren, but a handy lap I would say.
Yeah, definitely. And Leclerc is the kind of driver that, again, when the opportunity strikes, he can make the most of it. Obviously, a proven race winner as well. And whilst maybe not someone who comes immediately to mind as a championship contender, he definitely obviously has a lot of skill behind him and a lot of talent. And he's he's got more time with the Ferrari as well, doesn't he? So arguably, in the same way that we look towards Max as kind of setting the benchmark for Red Bull, Leclerc is you know, at the moment, I would argue that kind of lead driver for Ferrari, he definitely has the technical insight on the car. And I'm sure to a certain extent, the car is shaped around him. So when it comes to looking for the representative performance of Ferrari, I think Leclerc is probably the driver we should be looking towards.
And the driver we should be looking towards right now will be Lando Norris in the other McLaren. He's currently heading through Sector 2 now at the moment. He's got a personal best in the first sector. And let's see what his times will be like here through the middle sector. He's got just a car in front of him here, the Ferrari of Leclerc, but he passes him easily. He's purple in the middle sector. Oh, we got a yellow flag. And we've got a Haas that's stopped at the side of the track. It looks like. And we got a red flag. Red flag there.
Yeah, as Ollie Behrman's off, parked to the side. Doesn't look like he's hit the wall per se, but there are a lot of tire marks. So maybe just a. I'm trying to see where on the track where he is. He's facing the wrong direction, so he's obviously lost it somewhere and is not facing the right way.
Yeah, spun around. I think that's in sector 2 there through that slow speed section.
Interesting to have the red flag though. So maybe he has hit it. I can't see from the camera angles if he's damaged the back of the car there, but obviously. Oh yeah, okay. So you can see the rear right has definitely the suspension's had a bit of a knock. Obviously a slow speed section there, as you say. So maybe just a bit too early on lighting up the throttle. The fans obviously enjoying seeing a car up close, but yeah, Ollie will not be happy with that. And like you say, Chris, a weekend like this where you have such limited track time, something like that is not beneficial for his practice this weekend.
Yeah, so here we're going to get the replay. So this is coming into the slow speed section. Unfortunately, I don't. Oh, wow, that's really interesting. So he lost it. Let's see which, if I can get the corner number there for you guys. I believe it's turn. Yeah, it's a really interesting place that he lost it at.
Yeah, it looks like he runs a bit deep into 11. The car's off balance as he tries to bring it back round for 12. And then he's carrying so much momentum that the front end pointing, but the back end is just struggling to keep it. And then it swings round. So, yeah, maybe just one of those that, like you said, that slow in, fast out, and just carrying a bit too much momentum. He looked like he had control coming into 11, but the car was definitely wide of the apex. And yeah, although not a huge impact, obviously, the Haas mechanics are going to be a bit busy this weekend trying to get that ready again for qualifying.
Yeah, I think the only saving grace is that he didn't do any. I mean, I don't really see any huge damage. Maybe a broken suspension
Mm.
arm here or there. So at least it won't be a massive repair job in these next couple of hours. But the people that did affect that with the red flag there was of course Lando Norris, who was currently on a hot lap at the moment. He was about a tenth in a few seconds off the pace, but did set the fastest middle sector. So we don't know exactly where his time would have been, but most likely in the top 3 for sure. So his lap got interrupted as well. He wasn't able to get a representative run. So that unfortunately ended his session. And I'm not sure if we're going to get to see any more cars out on track with the red flag here with about 2 minutes to go.
Yeah, I definitely think that's looking towards the end of the session. Yeah, I'm just looking from what Haas have been saying. It's just the car rotated on him at slow speed. I think for all intents and purposes, a driver error there, and Piastri's obviously going to be happy with the result. But like you say, Norris perhaps had some untapped potential there as well. So a bit of a mental game going on, I'm sure, between the two McLaren drivers. And it's really going to be, I guess, Norris who has to prove the true pace of this car now.
Yeah, absolutely. And the upgraded bits on the RB21 of Max Verstappen there, we'll see if they're gonna pay any larger dividends. He was currently sitting P3 in that session on his best lap with the 127.5, about 4.5 tenths off the pace of McLaren. But I guess the standout in this session, the most pleasant surprise, is the two Williams, of course. Sainz P4, Albon P5. Sainz only about 5 tenths off the pace there of the McLaren, which is pretty solid. So I hope that they'll be able to continue that form into qualifying. And Josh, as you mentioned just a few minutes ago, Williams, of course, a team who's always been slick in a straight line. And Alex Albon has the fastest speed trap time, or fastest speed trap of 341 kilometers an hour. So they've got some real good straight line speed this weekend.
Yeah, definitely. I saw a video yesterday, and can't remember exactly what it was, but I think they were saying that Albon hit one of the fastest recorded speeds in this era of car at Miami last year. So
Wow.
again, it's deceptive. You'd think Monza, but it's definitely a circuit that can get some high speed going, particularly if you get a right slipstream on it.
Yeah, absolutely. We're just seeing a replay again of the Oliver Behrman's spin, and really interesting. Yeah, he touched the curb there on the exit of 11 heading into 12, and I wonder if that maybe just upset the car, or as if you said, he was just carrying a little bit too much speed there and then put the throttle down and the thing just spun around him. But it looked like he hit the rear a little bit into the wall. We saw a little bit of the vibration of the rear wing, but I think he'll be able to get away with that one.
Yeah, definitely. Like you say, it didn't look like a huge impact. I almost feel like the red flag was maybe because it was such a narrow section of circuit. Because obviously I didn't see him drive away, but it didn't look like the world's heaviest impacts. I've seen cars drive away with worse.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean these cars are pretty complicated when anti-stall kicks in and you're not, and the clutch of course isn't like the clutch in your road car. It's a lot harder to find the gears, and especially reverse as well. So but yeah, we'll see what the damage or the repair costs are on that Haas, but a little bit of an anticlimactic end to the session there with the red flag. We didn't get to see some of those flying laps there, but yeah, that about does it then, I guess, for free practice one there, Josh. It was a pretty busy session, a lot there to digest and talk about. So, what do you think? What are your predictions now heading into the rest of the weekend? Sprint qualifying coming up, and then of course sprint and the race on Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah, definitely. I think obviously Norris tracking ahead of Piastri. It looks like if he can get the lap together. Verstappen obviously quite content with where the car is at, and Leclerc had a bit of a surprise showing. I think for me though, the real ones to watch are going to be certainly Russell and potentially Antonelli. I feel like they have been pretty consistent with the pace, and as we've seen all season, are definitely able to convert when it matters. So yeah, for me, maybe Russell we could see with a podium or a race win, but of course McLaren, the favorites I would say overall. What about yourself?
Yeah, I would agree with you there. I think McLaren definitely going to be the team to beat, but I am going to keep an eye out there for Verstappen and those new floor on the car, and to see just how close he can get, particularly in the sprint there tomorrow. But yeah, Williams is looking good, and Isaac Hauger there quietly there up in P6 with the steady lap. But I think there's a lot more to see there from drivers like Lando Norris, who didn't get a representative time, and as well as Lewis Hamilton there down in 13th. So it should be interesting. We got a couple of hours there for the drivers to debrief and look at all the data and different things like that, make some changes if they want to ahead of sprint qualifying. And we'll get to see a good picture of what the pace is like in a few hours' time there in Miami. But that will about do it then for us here on the Backmarkers F1 Show Free Practice 1 stream. Josh, I'll leave some final thoughts to you on this session and what to expect for the rest of this weekend if you got any other comments.
No, I think it's shaping out to be a good weekend. It's going to be a good season, like I say, plenty of drama, and yeah, this has been fun, Chris. Always enjoy following you guys and listening, and yeah, we should do this again soon. It's been a good session to follow along, and yeah, big fan of what you guys are doing. So thank you as always, and keep up the great work.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate you joining me here today. And of course, I've got all of Josh's information down in the description below if you want to find out more about what he and his company SimStaff do. And if you also want more information, you can find a podcast that we did with Josh this time last year under the 2024 BMF1 Show podcast. and you'll get a much more in-detailed look at what Josh does and some of the things that he works with in the F1 world, which was really cool. So yeah, that'll be linked in the description below. And of course, we've got new videos coming this weekend too for the Miami Grand Prix, so stay tuned to the Backmarkers F1 show. And we'll also be back soon for the live streams for pre-practice as well. So I really appreciate all the viewers out there who joined us here on this Friday afternoon or evening from wherever you're watching in the world. I hope you guys have a good rest of your day. Enjoy the race this weekend. Josh, thank you for your time today, for joining us. We will see you again definitely on the channel. And next time, we'll be definitely coming ready to go for more Formula One action here in 2025. So for Josh Martin and Chris Cato, thank you so much for joining us here today, guys. Have yourselves a great day, and we'll see you again soon.
See you soon.